My fiancé's savior had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the doctors said he only had a few days left to live. He had never been in a relationship his entire life, and his only wish was to have a child to carry on his family's name. So, without any hesitation, my fiancée, who had always said she didn't want children, agreed to undergo in vitro fertilization for him. To show how serious she was, she even made a public declaration online, filled with emotion. "Julian," she wrote, "to make your wish come true, I will endure as many rounds of IVF as it takes." Everyone who knew us was probably waiting for me to react, to make a scene and look like a fool. Instead, I calmly liked her post and left a simple comment. "If you two genuinely care for each other this much, then I think this is where our paths diverge." After I posted it, I put my phone away, feeling nothing at all. Logically, a man should be furious when the woman he's been with for years, his fiancée, cheats on him and chooses another man. But for me, I couldn't even find the energy to be angry. I had already come to terms with the reality of the situation. Chloe didn't love me. About 6 months ago, Chloe had suddenly told me that she wanted to have a child for the man she considered her true love, Julian. "He's sick, Leo," she had said. "He doesn't have much time left. His only wish is to have a child to continue his bloodline. It's the only thing he's asking for, and I can't say no to him." When I first heard her say that, my immediate response was a firm no. What man could possibly accept his future wife having a baby for someone else, especially when that someone was a man she had never truly gotten over? At first, Chloe tried to stay calm and reason with me, but as the days went on, she started to scold me, her voice filled with a kind of righteous anger. "Why are you so cold-hearted?" she would ask. "Julian saved my life. What's so wrong with me giving him a child in return? It's my body, and you have no right to control what I do with it." I had heard that line from her more times than I could count. Then, about a month ago, she suddenly stopped the arguments. I was relieved, thinking she had finally given up on the absurd idea. As it turned out, she had already gone ahead with the IVF procedure behind my back. Now she was carrying Julian's baby, and our wedding was just 1 month away. I knew exactly what her plan was. She wanted to wait until everything was finalized, until we were legally married and had the certificate in hand. At that point, I would have no choice but to accept her pregnancy and the child that came with it. When I first discovered the truth, I was devastated. But now, sitting here after leaving that comment, I felt a strange sense of relief. I could still walk away from this. I could leave a woman who had so shamelessly hurt me, someone who clearly had no love left for me. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I unlocked it and saw a voice message from Chloe. Her voice was sharp and angry. "Leo, what is wrong with you? What kind of ridiculous comment did you leave on my post? Are you trying to make me a laughingstock? So what if I'm having a baby with Julian? What does it have to do with you? If you don't want to be with me, then we can just break up. And we can forget about the wedding next month, too." She was right. There was no need for a wedding anymore. I stared at my phone, my expression cold. Looking through our chat history, I saw that it was mostly messages from me. I was always asking her what she wanted to eat, or what she might like as a gift. I would tell her I could pick her up from work, or that we should go out to relax over the weekend. But Chloe's replies were always short and indifferent. Okay. Whatever. Or sometimes, "I'm busy. You can go by yourself. I have to take care of Julian. If you have time, you can bring some soup over for him." And, "Julian is feeling down today. I'm going to stay with him." In the end, the few conversations we did have were all about Julian. Now that I had decided to let go, I suddenly realized how much of a doormat I had been. No matter what Chloe did, I had tolerated it. The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth. Just then, my phone rang. It was Chloe. You've really gotten bold, haven't you? She said as soon as I answered. Now you won't even pick up my calls. Let me tell you something, Leo. You had better go back online and explain that my pregnancy was your idea, that you gave me your full consent. Her voice was as impatient and demanding as ever. I felt a small pang of something, maybe the last echo of old feelings, but it was quickly replaced by a complete sense of calm. Do you really think I'm a clown? I asked her. After doing something so disgusting, do you even care what other people think anymore? Chloe exploded instantly. Was that really necessary? She snapped. Julian has cancer. Why are you so jealous of a man who is dying? If you truly loved me, you would support me in this. Her self-righteous tone made me laugh, a hollow, empty sound. She always talked about how lovers should support and rely on each other. But deep down, had she ever really seen me as her partner, as her other half? I didn't want to argue with her anymore. It was pointless. So I just hung up the phone. After that fight with Chloe, we didn't speak for several days. That was fine with me. It finally gave me the time I needed to focus on my work at the lab. Before, because of all the drama with her, I couldn't fully concentrate during my experiments. On top of that, I had already taken several days off to get everything ready for the wedding. But now, I wasn't going to waste any more of my time or energy on Chloe. Thinking about what my professor had told me before, I gathered my thoughts and dialed the number of my senior colleague. A few seconds after it started ringing, her bright, clear voice came through the line. Hello, Leo, what's up? I've made up my mind, Senpai, I said. I want to join the professor's new lab. 6 months ago, my professor had established a new research laboratory, a closed facility. Once you joined the project, you couldn't leave until it was completed. Sometimes that meant 1 or 2 years, sometimes even longer. There was no fixed timeline. The professor had known about my relationship with Chloe. To help me join without any regrets, he had even arranged for me to have a break so I could spend time with her before the project began. But I had hesitated, thinking about how long I would be away from her. Now, though, things were different. Chloe was pregnant with another man's child. She had never once considered my feelings or respected our relationship. There was no reason for me to keep sacrificing my own dreams and career for her sake. So I took a deep breath and said calmly, Senpai, I'll join the professor's lab, and there's no need to schedule any extra time off for me. She was thrilled to hear it. That's great. The professor said we'll be leaving in about half a month. Would that work for you? I paused for a second. Half a month from now. That would be the exact day of my planned wedding with Chloe. What a coincidence. Yes, I replied. I'll be at the airport on time. After ending the call, I pulled out a red pen and circled the date on my calendar. 15 days left. In 15 days, I would be completely free from Chloe. To be honest, after 5 years together, I had always been aware of Chloe's compromise. We were childhood friends, and everyone around us, from our families to our friends, thought we were a perfect match. Our family backgrounds were similar, and we were well suited in many ways. And truthfully, I had fallen in love with her during those years we spent growing up together. But once we actually started dating, I realized she didn't really love me. For her, it was more about practicality. We knew each other well, our families got along, and our parents were supportive. All the boxes for a perfect marriage were checked off. I used to believe that, over time, my sincerity would eventually win her over, and she would choose me for real. But after she got pregnant, I finally woke up from that delusion. Everything I had been holding on to had been nothing but a pitiful joke. Without love, I was nothing to her. In our 5 years of dating, Chloe had always been guarded with me. She never let me touch her phone. I remember one time my own phone had died, and I instinctively picked up hers just to check the time. She snatched it from my hand almost immediately. "What are you doing?" she snapped, frowning at me. Her overreaction made me feel awkward, and I explained I just wanted to see the time. But she didn't believe me. She was convinced I was trying to check up on her, and started a huge fight over it. From that day on, I never touched her phone again. There were so many small moments like that. Between us, there was always an invisible wall, something I could never seem to cross. We were never like other couples. There was no sweetness, no real leaning on each other for support. I tried so hard to love her, to accommodate her every need, but she always found some excuse to push me away. It felt like I was just her backup plan, someone convenient to have around. Sometimes when Chloe was in a good mood, she would treat me with a little bit of kindness. And in those rare moments, I would forget all the past imbalance between us. I would hold on to that tiny scrap of affection like it was everything. There's a saying that those who are favored always act with impunity. And Chloe, she knew it. And she took full advantage of it. That evening, Chloe suddenly came back to the apartment. She saw me and casually tossed her bag in my direction. "Leo, you've really grown a spine, haven't you?" she said, her voice full of annoyance. "You even have the nerve to give me the cold shoulder." I dodged the bag. I glanced at her and said coldly, "What, should I just wait around to serve you while you're carrying another man's baby?" Chloe's eyes flew wide open. The anger on her face twisted her otherwise beautiful features. "Leo," she snapped, "do you have to talk to me in that passive-aggressive tone? Julian isn't just anyone. He saved my life. You don't love me nearly as much as you claim you do. You're just a selfish and emotionally detached man." I almost laughed at the accusatory tone she was using. Chloe, who had been spoiled since she was a child, had never once considered anyone else's feelings. She had clearly fallen for Julian, yet she still insisted it was all just out of gratitude. But out of all the ways to repay a supposed debt, did it really have to be by having his child? Back then, I could tolerate Chloe's spoiled temper. I loved her, so I thought I could accept everything about her. But love that gets no response is exhausting. So now, when I looked at the furious Chloe, I simply sneered and said, "Well, since you feel that way, why don't we just break up?" Hearing those words, Chloe's eyes went wide with shock. She bit her lip. "You actually dare to bring up breaking up with me? Fine. Leo, you need to cool off." Maybe it was my calm attitude that finally unsettled her. Chloe suddenly looked flustered and rushed out the door. She might have been bold enough to flaunt her love for Julian online, but if her family, the Lius, found out that their daughter got pregnant with another man's child right before her wedding, Chloe herself might not suffer the consequences, but her family would definitely make sure Julian was sent far away. The next day, since I was getting ready to leave and join the closed-off research lab, I called a few of my close friends out for dinner. I took the opportunity to tell them that the wedding was off. To my surprise, when they heard the news, they actually let out a collective sigh of relief. One of them said, "Leo, we all know you loved Chloe, but honestly, it was obvious to all of us. She never really loved you." Another one chimed in, "Yeah, man, canceling the wedding was the right call. You can't force love. It just doesn't work that way." Their words struck a chord of bitterness deep in my chest. Yeah. Who couldn't see that Chloe never loved me? From the beginning to the end, the only one who truly cared about our relationship was me. I kept thinking that maybe one day I would finally earn Chloe's genuine affection. But fate didn't give me that chance. It was only after Julian appeared that I finally saw what Chloe looked like when she was truly in love with someone. She would try to cook for him, despite having never set foot in a kitchen her entire life. She would care for him personally. Even though she had a serious obsession with cleanliness, she was willing to wipe Julian's body herself. And more than anything, it was about her attitude. She was always focused, always serious when it came to anything related to Julian. If it was about him, Chloe would care more than anyone else. So really, me stepping away, wasn't that a good thing for everyone? I drained my glass in one bitter gulp. With that heavy feeling in my chest, I drank with my friends until midnight before finally heading home. I didn't expect to see Chloe there. She was sitting in the living room. When I walked in, she looked up and said directly, "I need to talk to you about something." My steps toward my bedroom halted. The last time I heard those words was a couple of months ago, when Chloe told me she wanted to have Julian's child. And now that she was pregnant, what new drama was she about to start this time? She said, "Don't bother going for the wedding photos tomorrow." I glanced at the calendar on the table. Tomorrow's date had wedding photos written across it in thick black marker. I didn't know why Chloe wanted to cancel the photo shoot, but since I wasn't planning to go through with the wedding anyway, it didn't matter. Even if she hadn't said it, I would have found an excuse to cancel myself. Her suggestion just saved me the trouble. I nodded and replied, "All right, I'll call the photographer first thing in the morning and cancel the shoot." Chloe froze for a moment. She clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. She probably thought I would at least ask her why. After all, I had been the one to carefully plan every single detail of our wedding for months. Even the photographer I had booked for the shoot was someone I had paid extra just to get an earlier time slot, also we could have the perfect wedding photos. But she didn't expect me to stay so calm and agree without any hesitation. Chloe looked at me, a complex expression on her face. Then she said, "Actually, don't cancel it. Julian said he'll never have the chance to get married in this lifetime, so he wanted to take wedding photos with me, just so he can feel like he's been married once and won't have any regrets. Let him do the shoot with me tomorrow. We can just take new ones for ourselves later." Chloe's tone was light and casual, as if she were just deciding what to have for lunch. It was just like a month ago when she casually told me she wanted to undergo artificial insemination for Julian. It sounded like she was discussing something with me, but everything in her words made it clear that the decision had already been made. She was only informing me out of a sense of courtesy. My lowered gaze hid the bitterness in my eyes. Later, she still didn't know that I only had 13 more days left in this city. She didn't know there wouldn't be a later for us. I quietly replied, "All right," and then headed to my bedroom to get some rest. Since we weren't going to get married anyway, it didn't make a difference to me who Chloe took wedding photos with. Chloe looked at my retreating back and felt an inexplicable sense of unease. I was far too calm about everything. I didn't question anything she said. It left her entire speech, which she had prepared to convince me, completely useless. But then her phone rang. It was Julian. Whatever doubts she had about my behavior vanished. She went out to the balcony to take the call. When I woke up the next morning, Chloe was just about to leave. As she put on her shoes, she reminded me, "After the photo shoot, Julian and I are going on a short trip. He's always wanted to go to Hokkaido, so I'm going to go with him." She paused, then added, "As for the wedding, let's just keep it simple. I won't have time to rehearse or arrange anything. You can just make all the decisions. There's no need to ask me." I swallowed a bite of toast and replied, "Okay, keep it simple. A wedding with no photos, no guests, no officiant, and no groom. That was about as simple as it could get." Chloe glanced at me, quietly eating my breakfast, and then added, "Let's go to Europe for our honeymoon after the wedding. I remember you've always wanted to go." If this had happened in the past, hearing Chloe propose a honeymoon herself would have made me overjoyed. I would have started planning the whole trip immediately. After all, I had begged her to travel with me before, but she always refused, saying she didn't like traveling and that it was too exhausting. Now I just focused on eating my bread and said nothing. Chloe looked surprised by my lack of reaction. She seemed to want to say more, but after glancing at the clock on the wall, she hurried out the door, leaving behind only a quick, "We'll talk when I get back." I picked up the calendar and drew a huge X through the words "wedding photos" with my marker. 12 days left. After breakfast, I started packing my things, clearing out everything I wouldn't need anymore. The photo album that had fewer than 5 pictures of us together. The dusty movie projector. The matching couple's pajamas that were never worn. In the 5 years we had lived together, I had personally picked out every single item in this home, slowly turning an empty apartment into a warm and cozy space. But when you looked closer, you could see that most of the things were never used by Chloe. She always said that even if we were dating, she was still her own person. She didn't like couple items. She said they made her feel like she was constantly being tied down. After I left, all of this stuff would only be an eyesore to her anyway. I might as well clean it all out now and erase every trace of our memories along with it. Chloe didn't come back for an entire week, but I still knew exactly what she was doing, thanks to Julian, who seemed addicted to posting every little detail of his life on social media. The two of them went to hot springs together. They watched the ocean. They took selfies at sunrise. In his posts, I saw yet another version of Chloe, a version that showed she could act like an ordinary girl in love, just not in front of me. I didn't pay too much attention to where they went or what they did. I would just glance at the posts and quickly scroll past them. I wasn't idle during that week either. There was way too much stuff in the house, and it took me several days to finally sort through and clean everything out. I also took a short trip back to my parents' home to tell them that I was about to enter the closed research lab, and that I wouldn't be able to contact the outside world regularly once the project started. My dad looked surprised and asked, "But you and Chloe are about to get married. Wouldn't that mean you'll be living apart from each other right after the wedding?" There was worry in my mom's eyes, too. She held my hand and said gently, "Think carefully about this, son. You and Chloe have finally made it this far. I'm just afraid that if you go into the lab, she might not agree to it, and the wedding." I understood exactly what they were trying to say. They had watched me devote myself to Chloe all these years, and they were also well aware of how she treated me. Before I even proposed, they had tried to talk me out of it, kindly but clearly. They thought that I didn't matter enough to Chloe and suggested that I should think it through again. But back then, I was so confident that I could change her, that I could make her accept me fully. So in the end, they gave me their blessing. Now, with the wedding so close, they were worried that if I left for the lab, Chloe wouldn't accept it. Or worse, she might cancel the wedding and break up with me. They were just trying to protect me from getting hurt. But this time, the one who was canceling the wedding was me. When I told them, they went silent for a long time. I didn't tell them that Chloe was pregnant with another man's child. I was afraid that kind of truth would be too much for them to handle. I simply said that I wanted to keep contributing to the scientific field. My dad sighed and patted me on the shoulder, saying that as long as I wouldn't regret my decision, that was enough. I nodded. When I got back to my apartment, I called my childhood friend Sam over to help me carry all the boxes I had packed. They were stacked high in the living room, taking up a lot of space. Once everything was moved out, the room instantly felt empty. Sam looked around, visibly moved. "Damn, you're actually serious about this," he said. "I thought you were joking when you told me you were canceling the wedding. I mean, I've watched you chasing after Chloe all these years. What on earth happened?" He tossed me a can of beer and opened one for himself. Maybe because I was about to leave soon, I suddenly felt the urge to talk. I told Sam everything that had happened over the past month, including the fact that Chloe was already pregnant with Julian's child. Sam had seen everything between us over the years. After hearing it all, he exploded. "That's insane. After everything you did for her, she goes and cheats on you right before the wedding, and then has the nerve to expect you to just go along with it? What the hell is wrong with her?" I shook my head and let out a bitter laugh. "Who knows?" I said. "She said Julian saved her life, and now she wants to fulfill all his wishes." Sam's face darkened. "You saved her life too. So why the hell does she treat you like this?" I took a sip of beer and didn't say another word. Maybe. She just didn't love me. But it's all right. Soon enough, I'll be gone from her life for good. On the 5th day of my countdown, I submitted my resignation to the university where I was teaching. Back then, in order to be with Chloe, I had turned down my advisor's offer to continue doing research and chose instead to take a teaching position. So when my colleagues heard I was leaving, they were all surprised. One of them asked, "Why are you quitting, Mr. Evans?" Another one teased, "You just handed out wedding candy a few days ago. Are you leaving to become a full-time house husband? Your wife sure is lucky." I smiled as I held my boxes. "No," I said. "The wedding's been called off." As I was opening the front door to my apartment, I saw Chloe and Julian for the first time in a week. Chloe glanced at the stuff in my arms and instinctively asked, "Why are you carrying all that?" I casually came up with an excuse. "Just some things I don't use anymore. I figured I'd bring them back to my parents' house." Chloe nodded, then looked around the apartment, puzzled. "I was only gone for a week. Why does it feel like a lot of stuff is missing?" I carried the box to the bedroom and replied calmly, "I just cleared out some unnecessary junk." Chloe opened her mouth to say more, but Julian cut in. "Leo, Chloe has been traveling with me these past few days. She's been amazing. I also want to thank you for letting her take those wedding photos with me. It was a dream come true for me. Let me treat you both to dinner as a thank you. I might still have to rely on you two for a while, so I hope you won't mind too much." I could tell from the slightly provocative glint in his eyes that he was getting restless. After all, since the moment I found that ultrasound report, I hadn't said a word. Not to Chloe and not to anyone else. I hadn't questioned her, and I hadn't made a scene. But I had no desire to engage in a meaningless rivalry with him. In 5 days, I would be gone from Chloe's life for good. Right now, I just wanted to wrap things up quietly. Seeing my silence, Julian hesitated and then said to Chloe, "Chloe, is Leo upset? I mean, you two are getting married soon, but—" Chloe immediately frowned and snapped at me, clearly annoyed. "Julian is sincerely trying to thank us, and you're just sitting there with that attitude? It's just a meal. We're not trying to poison you. You will come with us. And stop being so petty. You're a grown man." I hadn't said a single word. Yet she had already made me out to be the villain. In the end, she dragged me along to the restaurant. When the waiter came over to take our order, I had just picked up the menu when Chloe spoke first. Nothing too oily or spicy, and no cilantro in anything. When the dishes arrived, Chloe attentively picked out food for Julian and placed it in his bowl. Then she pushed a plate of prawns toward me. "Julian can't eat seafood," she said, "so we ordered these just for you." Looking at the plate of prawns, I suddenly lost my appetite and set down my chopsticks. "I'm allergic to seafood," I said. What a joke. We had been together for 5 years, and Chloe didn't know I was allergic to seafood, but she knew all of Julian's dietary restrictions. She even remembered that he didn't like cilantro. For a second, Chloe looked genuinely confused, her expression completely blank. When she looked at me again, there was a rare flicker of guilt in her eyes. She added a few more dishes to the order after that, but I didn't touch a single bite for the rest of the meal. I just quietly sipped my water. As we were walking down the steps outside the restaurant, I got a call from my senior colleague from the lab. "Leo," she said, "the professor wants to double-check. You're going to follow the standard experiment schedule, right? The first phase involves a classified project. It's very likely you won't be able to contact the outside world for 1 to 2 years." My eyes landed on Chloe and Julian walking just ahead of me. They were side by side, and as they stepped down, Chloe unconsciously placed a protective hand on her belly. My voice was calm and steady when I replied, "Yes, confirmed." My senior sighed in relief on the other end. "Good. The professor was worried you wouldn't be able to let go of your wife." I withdrew my gaze and turned to walk in the opposite direction. "The wedding's been canceled," I said. "I'm ready to leave." Right as I finished speaking, a confused voice called out from behind me. Who's leaving? Chloe asked. Just as Chloe finished seeing Julian off and had closed his car door, she caught the last few words of my conversation. I realized she hadn't heard the beginning of the call, so I casually made something up. It's just a friend of mine, I said. He's leaving town soon. Chloe nodded and didn't press the matter any further. On the fourth day of the countdown, Chloe brought home the wedding photos she had taken with Julian. She was on a video call with him, holding her phone in one hand and the framed photos in the other, smiling sweetly. Julian, our wedding photos are ready. When I went to pick them up, the staff said they turned out beautifully, she said, beaming. At that exact moment, I came out of my room to get a glass of water. Chloe's smile faltered slightly, a trace of awkwardness flashing in her eyes. She looked like she wanted to say something to me. I glanced at the photo and calmly said, "They do look nice." Chloe was stunned. She suddenly realized that I hadn't really spoken to her in a long time. Not even a single message during her week-long trip with Julian. The silence felt unfamiliar to her. Julian kept chatting away on the call, and she shook her head, brushing off her unease, thinking that maybe I was just too exhausted from preparing for the wedding. On the second-to-last day, I remembered that once I entered the lab, I would have to bring everything I needed with me, including my own medication. So I went to the hospital to pick up some basic supplies. I didn't expect to run into Chloe and Julian, who had just come out from a prenatal checkup. Chloe opened her mouth to say something, but Julian beat her to it. He walked up to me and looked like he was about to kneel. "Leo, I know you haven't really accepted the fact that Chloe is pregnant, but I can't wait any longer. The doctors say I might only have 1 year left. I want to be alive to see my child born," he said. "After the baby is born, I'll take them away right away. I swear I won't interfere in your relationship with Chloe." Before I could respond, Chloe quickly pulled him up, her face full of concern. "You're not well. You can't be doing this." Then she turned to me. "Since you already know, I won't hide it anymore," Chloe said. "Don't worry, it's still early. This won't affect the wedding." A month ago, I might have been furious, devastated, and crushed with self-doubt. I might have wondered what I did wrong. What could have possibly made Chloe willingly carry another man's child? But after everything that had happened, I finally understood. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough for her. It was simply that she never loved me. And because she didn't love me, she never cared how her choices would hurt me. Now that I already knew the truth and had let go of everything I felt for her, there was no need for them to keep playing this tragic little act, as if I were the villain who was tearing apart true love. I looked at them calmly and said, "I know." Then I took the medicine I had come for and turned to leave. I still had a few things to pack. My departure was just around the corner. They clearly hadn't expected me to be so composed, especially Chloe. She watched my retreating figure with a complicated expression on her face. She remembered how I had reacted to the pregnancy rumor weeks ago, how much it had consumed me. But now that the truth was confirmed, I didn't even flinch. Strangely, that seemed to unsettle her. Just as I reached the stairs, Julian suddenly caught up to me and grabbed my sleeve. Chloe was still some distance behind us. With no one else in earshot, Julian finally dropped the act. He smirked and said, "Leo, how does it feel to know you'll be raising someone else's kid? Getting married while your wife is pregnant with another man's child? I swear, only you could put up with something like that." I had no interest in engaging with him. I yanked my arm away and turned to go. But with just that one motion, his body tipped awkwardly, and he began to fall down the stairs. I instinctively reached out and grabbed his arm, stopping him from tumbling down. Before I could even let go, a voice thundered from behind me, full of fury. "What are you doing?" Chloe had arrived, and Julian instantly slipped back into his innocent persona. "Chloe, I just wanted to thank Leo for being so understanding. I didn't think he would—" Hearing that, Chloe's face turned cold. "Leo, I can't believe you would do something like this. You owe Julian an apology. Right now." Hearing her blindly accuse me, I couldn't help but laugh out of sheer disbelief. "Me? Apologize?" I said. "Why don't you go check the security footage and see for yourself who should really be apologizing, and who should be thanking who?" I hadn't expected Chloe to completely take Julian's side without even bothering to check the surveillance cameras. She just assumed I had tried to push him down the stairs. "Julian is sick," Chloe replied. "Do you really think he would purposely try to hurt himself?" A flicker of panic flashed in Julian's eyes. "Let it go, Chloe," he said. "Leo is just upset. It's normal for him to react like that. Let's just leave." But Chloe wasn't done. "No," she insisted. "He has to apologize to you today." I stood my ground. I wasn't going to apologize for something I didn't do. Julian started to get nervous. If this dragged on, Chloe might really go and check the footage. So he held his head and said he wasn't feeling well. Chloe's furious expression immediately softened into concern. She rushed to support him and take him to see a doctor. I watched their backs as they left, and a cold bitterness rose in my chest. Over 20 years of knowing each other. 5 years of living side by side. And yet Chloe didn't have even a shred of trust in me. But it was fine. I was finally waking up. Finally pulling myself out of this situation. The last day before I was scheduled to leave, Chloe didn't come home. I figured she was busy taking care of Julian, who had supposedly fallen ill again. I had already sent my main luggage ahead to the lab, keeping only a small backpack with me for the flight. That night, Chloe finally returned. She still looked angry. "Julian is still lying in the hospital," she snapped. "He's sick. Can't you just be the bigger person for once? Why do you have to be so petty?" The bigger person. The kind of generosity she wanted. No man in the world could possibly live up to that standard. Chloe's eyes then caught the big red circle on the calendar. Her expression eased a little. "All right," she said. "The wedding is tomorrow. I don't want to argue anymore. Once it's over, you can apologize to Julian, and then we'll go on our honeymoon." I didn't respond. If Chloe had been paying the slightest bit of attention, she would have noticed that there were no wedding decorations anywhere in the house. I started to say. But before I could finish, her phone rang. Julian's voice came through the speaker, and Chloe immediately tensed up. "Wait for me," she said into the phone. "I'm coming." She hung up and stood to leave. "Julian's not feeling well. I'm going to check on him. I'll be back before the wedding tomorrow. Wait for me in the morning." The door closed behind her. And only then did the words I had swallowed finally come out. "Let's break up, Chloe," I said. "The wedding is off." My voice echoed in the empty room. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. I sat in the living room from night until dawn, watching as the darkness slowly gave way to the morning light. My phone buzzed with a reminder. 3 hours until my flight boarded. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and grabbed my already packed backpack. Then I picked up a marker and drew a big X across the number 10, the day of the wedding, on the calendar. Beneath it, I wrote, "Chloe, let's break up." I placed the calendar where she would be sure to see it first. Shouldering my backpack, I walked out the door and took a cab to the airport. Goodbye, Chloe. On the other side of town, Chloe didn't leave the hospital until Julian's condition had stabilized. As she walked along the street, she sent me a message asking if everything was ready for the wedding, adding that she was already on her way to the hotel. But even after getting in the car, she still hadn't received a reply from me. She opened her phone, ready to message me again, only to realize that our last conversation was from over 2 weeks ago. Chloe scrolled up through our chat history. Nearly the entire screen was filled with white message bubbles from me. Sometimes I was asking what she wanted for dinner. Sometimes I was confirming wedding details with her. Her replies, every single time, were brief. Whatever. Up to you. You decide. But I had never seemed to mind. I still messaged her every day, until these past 2 weeks, when there had been complete silence between us. A strange feeling passed through Chloe's chest. Why hadn't I messaged her for so long? That thought triggered a memory, one from a month ago, when she told me she was going to get pregnant with Julian's child through artificial insemination. That was the first time in 20 years she had seen such pain in my eyes, the first time I had ever shown such strong objection to anything she had said, and yet after that, the only thing I had firmly opposed was the artificial insemination itself. In all other things, I behaved just the same as before. But now that she thought about it, it was probably right after that last conversation, when she told me again that she was going to carry Julian's child, that our communication completely stopped. I didn't just stop messaging her. Even when she was at home, I barely spoke to her. The more Chloe remembered, the more uneasy she became. Her heart began to pound, as if something terrible was about to happen. She tried to calm herself, telling herself that I was probably just overwhelmed with the wedding preparations. At the same time, she told the driver to speed up. Chloe checked her phone again. Still no reply. Her grip on the phone tightened involuntarily. When she finally arrived at the hotel, several of her friends and family members were already there. They were huddled together discussing something, but when they saw her, they immediately came over. Mrs. Liu frowned as she looked at her daughter rushing in and asked, "Chloe, why aren't you wearing your wedding dress? And where's Leo? Didn't he come with you?" A friend glanced around, also confused. "Yeah, where's the groom? You haven't even changed into your dress yet." Hearing that they hadn't seen me either, a wave of panic surged in Chloe's chest. She had clearly told me the night before to go straight to the venue in the morning. So where was I now? Had I gone to the banquet hall first? Chloe forced a smile and said, "Leo is probably already inside the hall checking on everything." She turned to head toward the hall, but then she suddenly realized. She didn't know which banquet hall it was. I had never told her, and she had never asked. The people around her had no idea either, otherwise they wouldn't still be waiting in the hotel lobby. Chloe quickly grabbed a nearby staff member and asked, "Excuse me, could you tell me which hall Mr. Leo Evans reserved for his wedding?" The staff member flipped through the reservation log and replied politely, "Mr. Evans booked hall number 3. Chloe exhaled slightly, unconsciously relieved. So she had overthought it. I had just been busy lately. She even thought that maybe during our honeymoon she would surprise me for once, buy me a gift to thank me for everything I did to prepare this wedding. But in the very next second, the staff member paused and looked at the last note in the reservation column. With a puzzled expression, he added, "But Mr. Evans called us more than 2 weeks ago to cancel the reservation. He said the wedding has been canceled." His words struck everyone like a hammer to the chest. Chloe's mind went completely blank. "What do you mean, the wedding has been canceled?" Chloe took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. How could the wedding be canceled? Just 2 months ago, when I proposed, the joy on my face was so obvious I couldn't even hide it. How could someone like that suddenly decide to call everything off? The friends and family around her were equally confused. They hadn't gotten the date wrong, so why would anyone say the wedding was canceled? After the hotel staff confirmed again and again that it had indeed been me who called to cancel, Mrs. Liu, trying to hold back her anger, pulled Chloe aside and asked, "What's going on with Leo? Didn't you two settle on the wedding date a long time ago? Not only is he not here today, he canceled the wedding? What does that even mean?" Looking at her daughter's stunned expression, clearly just as shocked as she was, Mrs. Liu felt her anger rise even higher. She had known me and Chloe had been close for 20 years. She could see how deeply I cared for Chloe, which is why she had trusted me with her daughter. But now, on the very day of the wedding, not only was I missing, I had canceled it 2 weeks ago, and none of them had any idea. "Call him," Mrs. Liu snapped. "Right now. Ask him if he even still wants to get married." It was only then, as if suddenly waking from a dream, that Chloe pulled out her phone and dialed my number. Her hand trembled slightly as she held the phone to her ear. But by that time I was already on a flight heading to the capital. The call didn't even connect. All she heard was the cold, mechanical voice from the operator. A heavy sense of dread settled over Chloe's heart. Everything had been fine just yesterday, so why was I suddenly unreachable today? Panic surged in her chest, and she couldn't hold it back anymore. She rushed back home, clinging to one final shred of hope. But when she opened the front door, the house was silent. Clearly, I wasn't there. Then she suddenly noticed. The photo frame that had always sat on the table was gone. Inside had been one of the few photos of her and me together. I had always cherished that picture, kept the frame spotless every day. And now, it was missing. Not only that, the razor in the bathroom, the clothes in the wardrobe, everything that belonged to me was gone, completely, vanished. Chloe's mind flashed back to when she and Julian had just returned from their trip. She remembered thinking the place felt emptier than usual. She had noticed the missing photo frame then too, but she had only vaguely sensed that something was off. When I told her that I had cleared out some unnecessary stuff, she hadn't questioned it. But now she realized I hadn't just cleared out unnecessary things. I had cleared out everything, every last one of my belongings and every memory we had ever shared. And now even I was gone. There was only confusion left in Chloe's eyes. Where had I gone? And why would I do this? She looked around the apartment again, still unwilling to give up, and spotted the calendar on the table. It looked like something had been written on it. She quickly stepped over and picked it up. There, written in thick black marker, were just a few words. "Let's break up." In that instant, Chloe felt as if lightning had struck her. The suspicion that had been quietly lingering in the back of her mind was finally confirmed. I was really breaking up with her. But why? They were supposed to get married today. Chloe knew this was something I had dreamed about for 20 years. How could I possibly give it all up? In the whirlwind of her thoughts, her mind flashed back to my overly calm expression before she had left the house the previous night. I had looked like I wanted to say something to her, but she had been in such a rush to get to the hospital to see Julian that she hadn't stayed long enough to hear me out. Just before the door closed, she had caught a glimpse of me sitting on the sofa. There was no joy on my face for the upcoming wedding, and no anger over her running off to see Julian on the eve of it, just stillness, like water without a single ripple. So that's what I had wanted to say last night? That I was breaking up with her? Chloe collapsed onto the sofa, her thoughts an uncontrollable mess. The phone on the coffee table kept ringing, calls from her parents, from friends, but she didn't have the energy to answer a single one. She just couldn't understand why I wanted to break up with her. According to the hotel staff, I had canceled the wedding 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Suddenly, Chloe remembered. That was when she got confirmation from the hospital that the artificial insemination had been successful. She had planned to bring it up again that day and convince me to support her decision. But when the hospital informed her she was already pregnant, excitement took over, and she rushed out the door, dropping the topic completely. Now, the memories of the past 2 weeks came into sharp focus. Canceling the wedding photos, going on a trip with Julian. I had stayed so calm through it all, even detached. If it had been the old me, I would have fought her on every single decision. Chloe felt a sudden panic and confusion. So, I had already planned to leave back then? But didn't I understand? Julian had saved her life. Everything she was doing was just to repay a debt. Why couldn't I understand that? She had kept the artificial insemination a secret not to betray me, but because she thought it wouldn't succeed so easily. If she waited to get my consent, Julian might not live long enough to see his child born. So she went ahead with the first procedure, believing she would have time to explain things and convince me slowly. She believed I loved her enough to eventually accept it, but she hadn't expected it to work on the very first try. It had thrown her entire plan off. Still, when I found out at the hospital, I didn't seem to react that strongly. I never brought it up again. So why now? Why break up right before the wedding? What Chloe didn't know was that I had known about the pregnancy long before she said a word, and the breakup wasn't a sudden decision. It had been quietly taking root in my heart for 2 weeks. In that time, I had burned through every last drop of love I had carried for her over 20 years. Unwilling to accept it, Chloe picked up her phone again and dialed my number. But as soon as the call connected, her panic was replaced by a surge of anger. On the other end, 2 hours later, I landed in the capital. Before takeoff, my senior had texted me, saying she was worried I might not find the place, so she had arranged for someone to pick me up. There were a lot of people waiting at the arrivals gate. I scanned the crowd several times, but didn't see anyone holding a sign with my name on it. I was about to take out my phone and call when I heard a cheerful voice from behind me. "Senior!" I turned around to see a girl walking toward me with a sweet, glowing smile. "Sorry, do I know you?" I asked. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. She shot me a playful glare, her voice brimming with joy. "Come on, senior. It's only been 5 years and you've already forgotten your junior? Should I go report you to the professor?" Suddenly, the image of a tearful girl from 5 years ago came flooding back to me. "You're Mia?" I said, surprised. Back then, when I was about to graduate, the professor had just taken in a new student named Mia. I had been busy with my thesis and didn't interact with her much. But I remembered one thing. Her experiment data had been a complete mess, and she couldn't figure out where she had gone wrong. I happened to be at the lab picking something up and noticed her red-rimmed eyes as I passed by. I asked if she needed help, and after carefully going through her process step by step, we finally found the problem. And now, 5 years later, the once quiet, teary-eyed girl had changed so much that I hadn't recognized her at all. Mia walked up naturally and led the way, teasing, "So you do remember me after all. I thought you'd completely erased me from your memory." I rubbed the tip of my nose, feeling a bit awkward. After spending years with someone like Chloe, who was always so cold and distant, I found myself unsure how to deal with Mia's warmth and openness. But she didn't seem to mind at all. Seeing me walk so slowly, she immediately came back, grabbed my arm, and pulled me along. "Come on, senior. The professor has been waiting forever for you." We sped toward the lab. When we finally stood outside the professor's office, I hesitated. I didn't dare to knock. Back when I was about to graduate, my professor had begged me to stay and continue my research. But at the time, Chloe had just agreed to be my girlfriend. My whole world was filled with her, so I declined his offer and followed her to become a teacher. The professor tried again later when the lab launched this new project. He spent a long time trying to convince me over the phone. But I had been with Chloe for 5 years by then. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her, so I turned him down again. That phone call, it had really upset him. Even 2 weeks ago, it had been my senior who called me. I had been too afraid that the professor was still angry at me. Mia watched me hesitate, her eyes darting mischievously. She decided to help. The next second, she raised her voice and shouted toward the office door. "Professor, he's back!" My eyes widened, and I instinctively reached out to cover her mouth. Before Mia could finish, my hand was already pressed against her lips. They were soft and warm. We both froze. I pulled my hand back as if I had touched something scalding. Mia turned her head away, looking a little flustered. The tips of her ears turned red. I didn't know what to do until a familiar voice came from inside the office. "Well, what are you two waiting for? Get in here." I didn't have time to think too much. I quickly pulled myself together, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. It had been 5 years since we last met, and the first thing I noticed was the strands of gray that were now visible in my professor's hair. The guilt in my heart surged again as I remembered how I had left him, despite his repeated attempts to get me to stay, all because I had chosen to follow Chloe. The professor looked at me, his most promising, yet most disappointing student. And all the words he might have wanted to say turned into a single heavy sigh. "This time," he said, "stay and work hard in the lab." I swallowed the emotion that was rising in my throat and nodded firmly. He didn't say anything more, just waved his hand and told Mia to show me to my dorm room. As soon as I got to the room, I dropped my backpack and flopped onto the bed, letting out a deep sigh of relief. I had barely slept since the night before, only catching a couple of hours of restless sleep on the plane. The exhaustion hit me all at once as soon as I lay down. Without even unpacking, I fell asleep almost instantly. But just as I was deep in sleep, my phone started ringing. I groaned, blindly fumbling for my phone, my brain still foggy with sleep. I answered purely out of reflex. On the other end, Chloe's voice exploded into my ear, laced with anger. "Leo, where the hell did you go?" The sheer volume of her voice snapped me fully awake. I looked at the time. I had only just fallen asleep. Between the jarring wake-up and the fatigue from traveling, I couldn't help the irritation in my tone. "I already wrote it clearly on the calendar," I said. "We broke up." The moment I said that, her anger only intensified. She still didn't understand. "No," she snapped. "I didn't agree to it. And even if you want to break up, don't you owe me an explanation? You just disappeared on our wedding day and left me with a note saying we're done. What is that supposed to mean?" If you listened closely, there was a hint of something else in her voice. Something soft, something hurt. Because Chloe had never once imagined that she and I would actually break up. Even less so that she would be left at the altar. I had been by her side for 20 years. How could I just walk away? But all I wanted right now was to go back to sleep. I had no interest in dragging this out. "You're pregnant with Julian's child," I said. "Do you really think I'd marry a woman who is carrying another man's baby? And besides, I finally realized something. You never loved me." The line went quiet for a long moment. I was already starting to drift off again when Chloe's hoarse voice finally came through. "So, you're breaking up with me? Because of the baby?" I didn't respond. The truth was, her pregnancy was only the spark, the thing that ignited a love that had already been hanging by a thread for years. Watching her over the past few months with Julian, I had finally seen that she could be gentle, attentive, and even devoted, and I realized for the first time that she was never like that with me, because she didn't love me. That was the real reason I was walking away. Chloe spoke again. "I don't agree to breaking up. Tell me where you are. I want to see you." But I had no intention of seeing her again. Breaking up isn't like getting married. It doesn't require two people to say yes. When even one person decides to walk away, the relationship is over. And I believe a proper ex should be like the dead, completely gone from the other person's life. There was no need for me and Chloe to ever meet again. So I said flatly, "There's no point. Let's just end things peacefully. Let's leave each other with some dignity." Before she could respond, I hung up the phone. Then I opened my call log and added Chloe's number to the block list. When I opened my messaging app, I realized she had also sent dozens of messages. At first, she had been asking about the wedding. Then, after realizing I was gone, she had started asking where I went, again and again. In one day, she had sent more messages than she had in the entire past month. I skimmed through them briefly, then blocked her there as well. After that, I tossed my phone aside, pulled the blanket over my head, and went back to sleep. When the call was abruptly cut off, Chloe froze for a moment. It was the first time I had ever hung up on her, and I hadn't even explained anything. Why end the call like that? She didn't even know where I had gone. Chloe quickly redialed, but the line only returned a cold, robotic message. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is currently unavailable. Please try again later." She tried sending me a message instead. But the second it went out, a red exclamation mark popped up. Message sent but rejected by the recipient. Chloe's mind went completely blank. I had blocked her. I had gotten upset before, sure, but I had never blocked her. Panic overtook her, followed quickly by a wave of anger. It really was because of the baby. But she had explained it so many times. Julian had cancer. He had saved her life. Of course she wanted to help him fulfill his last wish. Why couldn't I just understand that? Still, beneath the anger was something worse, fear. She had never imagined breaking up with me. Now not only did she not know where I was, she had no way to contact me. In desperation, Chloe thought of Sam, my close friend. She had only met him once, during a gathering where I had brought her along to Sam's place. She retraced the route from her memory and rushed over. When Sam opened the door, he found Chloe standing there, clearly flustered and out of breath. Sam had always thought it was unfair how much his best friend chased after Chloe, while receiving so little in return. But since we were dating, he hadn't said anything back then. After I told him the real reason for the canceled wedding, however, Sam's tolerance had reached its limit. He couldn't understand how someone could be so ungrateful. Seeing Chloe now on his doorstep, all of that frustration finally spilled out. He sneered and said, "Well, well, if it isn't the fiancé turned baby mama of my dear friend, what brings you here?" Chloe froze. Sam knew about the pregnancy, but she had no time to worry about that. All she cared about now was finding me. "Where did Leo go?" she asked directly. Sam rolled his eyes. When I was by her side every day, she barely gave me the time of day. Now that I was gone, she suddenly cared? "I don't know," he snapped. He started to close the door, but Chloe reflexively reached out to stop it. Sam didn't react in time, and the door slammed into her hand. Pain shot through her fingers, and her eyes instantly welled up with tears from the sharp, physical ache. Cradling her hand, she bit her lip and forced herself to hold back the pain. "I need to know where he went," she insisted. Sam cursed under his breath. He truly couldn't wrap his head around her. "You're having another man's baby," he said coldly. "Why the hell do you care where Leo went?" That hit hard, and suddenly everything made sense to Chloe. Even my friends disapproved of the pregnancy, but she had her reasons. And besides, she hadn't even done anything with Julian physically. She repeated the explanation she had given me so many times before. "Julian saved my life. I'm only helping him have a child to repay him. That's all. There's nothing else between us. Just tell me where Leo is. I want to explain things to him." Sam listened with a smirk forming on his face, then scoffed. "You want his address? Keep dreaming. I'm not letting you mess with him again. Leo saved your life, too. Why don't you ever try repaying him?" Chloe was stunned. Leo saved her life? What was he talking about? She had no memory of that, none at all. She asked, "What do you mean? When did Leo ever save me?" Sam hadn't expected her to forget something so important. The realization only deepened his sense of injustice for his friend, and his disgust toward the woman standing in front of him grew even stronger. He let out a cold laugh. "Wow, it must be nice to have such a selective memory. You really forgot what happened on New Year's Eve 6 years ago? You didn't even thank him back then, and now you treat him like this?" The more Sam spoke, the more his anger built up. He poured out everything, how I had silently given 20 years of my life for Chloe, and what really happened on that terrifying night 6 years ago. He even pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of me lying unconscious in a hospital bed after surgery. Chloe didn't know how she made it out of Sam's house. Her mind had gone blank, her thoughts spiraling. It felt like her world had collapsed around her, like she was falling into a darkness where no light could reach her. In her memory, it had always been Julian who had saved her that night. How could it have been me? But if what Sam said was true, if it was me who had saved her, then she had been wrong about everything. All these years. Even worse, her hand trembled as it slowly moved to rest on her belly. Even this child should never have existed. Chloe immediately hailed a cab and rushed to the hospital. She had to know the truth. Was it really Julian who saved her that night? Sitting in the cab, she tried to piece everything together. She remembered walking back to her dorm when she realized someone was following her. The man had grabbed her, covered her mouth and nose, and dragged her into a dark alley. His hands had been all over her, and there was a knife pressed against her back. All she had felt was pure, paralyzing fear. She thought she wouldn't live to see the morning, but just when she thought it was over, a shadow had charged in, tackling her attacker to the ground. She had curled up in a corner, trembling uncontrollably. She tried to call the police, but passed out from the shock before she could do anything. When she woke up, the first person she saw was Julian. Naturally, she had assumed it was him who had saved her, but according to Sam, it had been me all along. I had been stabbed during the rescue. I had spent 3 days unconscious in the hospital. By the time I woke up, she had already been discharged, and I never told her the truth. Not once in 6 years. I didn't want her to feel indebted to me. More than that, I was afraid it would bring back the trauma of that night for her. The more she thought about it, the more Chloe began to panic. If I was the one who saved her, what had she done? What kind of person had she become? When she finally arrived at the hospital, Julian looked surprised to see her. "Chloe, I thought today was your wedding with Leo," he said. His eyes widened when he saw the red mark on her hand. "What happened to your hand? I'll get a doctor." Chloe stopped him. "No need," she said calmly. Then she looked him dead in the eyes. "Julian, are you really the one who saved my life that night?" She stared at him, not missing a single flicker of emotion on his face. Julian clearly hadn't expected the question. A flash of panic crossed his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it came as he forced himself to remain composed. "Of course I was," he said. "You saw me when you woke up, didn't you? Don't you remember?" He said it with complete confidence. But Chloe had been watching him closely. She didn't miss that moment of hesitation, of guilt, before he collected himself. Her heart sank. Julian was not the one who had saved her. Chloe closed her eyes. Her heart felt as if it had been torn apart by the truth she had just uncovered. "Julian," she said quietly, "you're not the one who saved me 6 years ago." Julian's eyes widened. Panic flickered inside him. Hadn't it been accepted all along that he was her savior? Why was Chloe bringing it up again now and denying it? Still, he kept his face calm, managing a gentle smile as he reached for her hand. "Chloe, what are you talking about?" he said softly. But the confusion, the guilt, and the grief that had been building inside Chloe since my disappearance suddenly crashed down on her all at once. She slapped Julian's hand away, and with her eyes red, yelled at him, "It was Leo! The one who saved me was Leo, the man who's been by my side for 20 years. Stop lying. I've already seen the proof. Why did you lie to me?" Seeing her fall apart like this, Julian realized there was no point in hiding the truth anymore. Back then, he had just been visiting a friend at the hospital. When he passed by Chloe's room, he noticed her face and paused. just in time to see her wake up. She had mistaken him for her savior. And Julian, he hadn't corrected her. He had intended to get close to her using that false identity, but unexpectedly his family sent him abroad, and they lost contact. It wasn't until 6 months ago, after his cancer diagnosis, that he returned and reached out to Chloe again. Julian hurried to explain, "Chloe, I only used it as an excuse to get closer to you." But Chloe was already consumed by despair. She no longer cared why he had lied. All she wanted was to draw a clear line between them and make things right. "Word by word," she said firmly, "I'm going to terminate the pregnancy." Julian panicked. This child was the last legacy he could leave his family. She couldn't just get rid of it. "No," he cried. "That baby is alive now. You're its mother. How can you just give it up? And besides, Leo already knew about the pregnancy 2 weeks ago, didn't he? I bet the wedding was called off by now. Wouldn't it be better for you to give birth to my child and become the daughter-in-law of the Ito family?" Chloe froze at that last sentence. 2 weeks ago. A wave of sorrow surged from her chest and flooded her entire body. Tears rolled down her cheeks without pause. So I had known about her pregnancy all along. That's why I had left that day. That's why I had been so calm for the past 2 weeks. That's why, when they met at the hospital, I didn't even look surprised. And she hadn't seen any of it. Every time she thought of how deeply she had hurt me, for the sake of a man who wasn't even her real savior, her chest ached as if it had been slashed open. She wiped her tears away, and in her eyes was a clarity she had never had before. She would terminate the pregnancy. She would find me. She would apologize. And she would make up for every bit of love I had ever given her over the last 20 years. Seeing that she was about to leave, Julian forgot all about his illness and tried to stop her. "Chloe," he called after her, "after everything we've been through these past 6 months, are you telling me you don't feel anything for me?" But in Chloe's mind now, there was only one person. Leo. The boy who used to quietly follow her at a distance during their school days. The man who made her warm brown sugar ginger tea when she had cramps. The one who loved her for 20 years without ever wavering. She couldn't deny it anymore. At first, she had only agreed to date me out of curiosity. She had wanted to know whether someone could really stay in love for so long. Back then, she hadn't given me much of her heart. But after 5 years of living side by side, she came to feel my care, my thoughtfulness. And she finally realized there really was someone in the world who could love another person, unchanged, for 20 years. She now understood. She had already fallen in love with me long ago, without even knowing it. When she looked at Julian again, all she felt was coldness and distance. "I never did," she said, "and from now on, I won't be in contact with you again." Chloe scheduled the surgery that very day to terminate the pregnancy. When Julian's family found out, they stormed into the hospital, yelling that the doctors had killed their only heir. But Chloe's signature was there in black and white on the consent form. The hospital called the police, who escorted the family out for disturbing the public order. Chloe didn't pay attention to anything related to Julian's family anymore. She refused to accept losing me without a trace, so she returned to Sam's place to ask where I had gone. When he wouldn't answer the first time, she started waiting outside his door every single day. After several days of this, Sam finally gave in. Just a little. "He's gone to a lab," he said, annoyed. "He left the city already, that's all I'm telling you." No matter how much Chloe pressed, Sam wouldn't say another word about which lab it was. But she and I had gone to the same university, so she started asking around among our old classmates and eventually learned that my mentor had founded a new lab in the capital. There was no concrete proof that I was working there, but something in her heart told her. I was there. Chloe bought a ticket and flew straight to the capital. With the address her classmates had given her, she managed to find the lab. The first round of experiments hadn't started yet, so the facility wasn't under a full lockdown. Chloe found someone who had just come back from outside and asked if they could help her look for me. When I heard from my senior that someone was asking for me by name, I was surprised. I had only given my location to a few people. Who could possibly have found me so soon after I left the city? I walked out with a puzzled look on my face and froze when I saw who it was. Chloe. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up with tears. The fear and uncertainty she had been holding inside for weeks finally collapsed into something solid. She rushed forward and grabbed my hand tightly. "Why did you break up with me? Why did you leave without saying anything? Do you have any idea how hard it was to find you?" I was still in shock from seeing her, and her questions only left me more stunned. I didn't pull my hand away immediately. Chloe noticed my lack of resistance and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I was just angry. Maybe once she explained everything, I would forgive her. But her hopeful fantasy shattered in the very next second. I came to my senses and instantly pulled my hand away, my expression turning cold. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice clearly impatient. Chloe panicked at my reaction. "I came to apologize," she said quickly. I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it. My answer has never changed. We're over. I don't know how you found this place, but don't come looking for me again. The experiment starts tomorrow, and I just want to focus on my work. You should go back. Julian is probably waiting for you." Chloe knew that my past attitude had hurt me deeply, and that's why I was being so cold now. But she was willing to use all the time she had to make it up to me. "Leo, I don't feel anything for Julian," she said. "The person I love is you." In 5 years together, this was the first time I had ever heard Chloe say the word love. But those 5 years had been empty of joy. My heart had long since sobered. I didn't believe a word of it anymore. I gave her a sharp look, full of sarcasm. "You don't find it ridiculous to say that now?" And with that, I turned and walked back into the lab, unwilling to speak to her any further. Chloe called my name over and over, but I never looked back. She found a hotel near the lab and checked in. She thought, "He can't stay inside forever. I'll see him again." But a day passed, then 2, then a week. Still no sign of me. Unable to wait any longer, she asked one of the security guards, only to learn that the experiment had already begun. No one would be allowed out until it was complete. "How long will the experiment take?" she asked urgently. The guard replied, "The estimated duration is 18 months. Chloe flew back to our old city in a daze. When she got home, she lay down on the bed we had shared for 5 years. But the house, once so familiar, now felt unbearably cold. There would be no one to bring her water or medicine when she was sick, no one to call her name, or leave a light on for her when she came home late. Chloe curled into a ball, as if trying to create some warmth for herself. At some point, she fell asleep, and in her dreams, it was as if the past week had never happened. She and I had our wedding as planned. The next day, we got our marriage certificate, officially becoming husband and wife. Then we traveled through Europe on our honeymoon, taking photos together at every destination. When Chloe woke up, she didn't know if what she had seen was a dream or reality. She instinctively called out my name, but there was no familiar voice replying, only the sound of sparrows chirping outside the window. She reached for her pillow and found it soaked in tears. My cold, decisive rejection. The truth about her mistaken savior. They played over and over in her mind, leaving her in a fog of helplessness. But when her eyes landed on the calendar, and the bright red word breakup marked on it, her thoughts finally cleared. She didn't want to break up with me. Even if I was going to be locked inside the lab for a year and a half, she would wait. For the past 20 years, it had always been me chasing after her. Now, it was her turn to chase after me. This time she would be the one to prove her love. Chloe's eyes grew firm. She would wait for me to come back. 2 years later, at the airport in my hometown. Pushing my luggage with a smile on my face, I followed the figure skipping ahead of me, occasionally turning my head to take in the changes around me. I never imagined that our first experiment in the lab would take a full 2 years, but fortunately, the results were perfect, and the professor granted us 2 months of vacation. Finally, I had set foot again in my old city. For a moment, I felt a wave of nostalgia. It had been 2 years since I left, but this time, when my gaze fell on Mia, who was excitedly hopping in front of me, my expression softened. The difference was that 2 years ago, I had left alone, and today I had returned with someone. More than that, we had something important to do this time. Mia turned around to make sure I was still following, then ran back and gave me a playful push on the back. She said, "Senior, if we don't hurry, we're going to be late." When Sam found out I was returning, he didn't hesitate for a second and immediately planned a welcome-home dinner. After 2 years without seeing my friends, it was finally time to reunite. I had missed them deeply, so I agreed. The dinner was scheduled for the same day we arrived. By the time we got to the restaurant, it was already the appointed time. Mia grabbed my hand and we rushed in, almost running. I don't know if it was an illusion, but as we went up the stairs, I thought I saw a familiar silhouette. I didn't think much of it. We were in a hurry, after all. The most important thing was to find the private room. Elsewhere, Chloe covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filled with tears, overwhelmed with emotion at recovering something she thought she had lost. 2 years had passed. She had waited a full 2 years, and finally she had seen me again. No one knew how she had spent those endless nights alone in that empty apartment. At first, she couldn't sleep. Even when she did manage to doze off for a bit, the first thing she did upon waking was call out my name, but the only response she ever got was absolute silence. There was no one to make her breakfast anymore, no one waiting for her to come home. She searched every corner of the apartment and couldn't find a single one of my belongings. Even the couple's pajamas had vanished. All she had left was the calendar on her nightstand. Although the last thing written on it was the breakup notice, it was still the only thing I had left behind. And deep down she believed that as long as she didn't accept it, the breakup wasn't real. She thought that if she could see me again, if she could explain everything sincerely, tell me that she had mistaken her savior, that she had completely ended things with Julian, and had even terminated the pregnancy. After 20 years together, I couldn't possibly give up so easily. She had always waited for my return, just to tell me everything she had kept buried. And then maybe we could be together again. Now, 2 years later, fate had finally given her a chance. But remembering the girl who had been by my side just now, Chloe felt a sting of jealousy. They seemed very close. However, she had heard the girl call me senior. I had joined my professor's lab 2 years ago, so that girl was probably just a lab partner. With that thought, Chloe calmed herself a little. Seeing us enter the restaurant, she followed behind. The moment Mia and I opened the door to the private room, there was a loud pop, and thousands of streamers flew through the air, showering down on us. Sam came over laughing and gave me a friendly smack on the shoulder. He said, 2 years without a single letter. If I hadn't known you were in the lab, I would have reported you missing to the police. Everyone in the room burst into laughter, joking non-stop. Someone chimed in. It's true. 2 years ago you canceled your wedding and then disappeared. If it weren't for Sam, we wouldn't have known anything. That's so messed up, man. Another added. Exactly. You didn't say a word to anyone. And now you're late to your own welcome-home dinner. That calls for a punishment. Drink. Yeah, no one's going home sober tonight. Let's drink till we drop. Mia looked a little nervous. It was her first time meeting my friends, and she was worried they wouldn't accept her. I noticed her unease and discreetly took her hand. When our eyes met, she seemed to feel much calmer, Seeing my friends genuinely happy about my return filled me with emotion. But now, it was time to introduce Mia. I cleared my throat, raised our joined hands, and said loudly, "Now that I'm back, I want to introduce my lab partner, Mia." I paused and continued. "She's also my fiancée." After everything that had happened with Chloe, I didn't think I would ever fall in love again. I was even ready to dedicate myself solely to research for the rest of my life. But I never imagined that in these 2 years, my lab partner Mia would gradually win over my heart. Mia and Chloe couldn't have been more different. If Chloe was a stone that never warmed up, Mia was a little sun that radiated constant warmth. With Mia, I understood for the first time what it truly meant to love, to be genuinely in love with someone. So 2 months ago, on our 1-year anniversary, I proposed to her. We agreed that we would get married once the experiment was over. My friends exchanged glances and then instantly erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "You sly dog! Saying you were working on experiments, but you were actually falling in love, huh?" Another said, "Fiancé? So when's the wedding? I'm calling dibs on being your best man." "Me too." The cheerful atmosphere helped Mia completely relax. I smiled, just about to announce the wedding date, when a trembling voice sounded from behind me. A woman asked, "She's your fiancée? Then what am I?" Before walking into the private room, Chloe had even stopped by the restroom to fix her makeup in front of the mirror. She hadn't expected to run into me today. Originally, she had just come to this restaurant for a meal. But once she knew where I was, she couldn't wait for the next time. After quickly pulling herself together, she made her way to the door. She had imagined how I might react. Maybe I would still be mad, unwilling to forgive her. Or maybe I had already moved on and saw her as just an old acquaintance. Whatever the case, she thought she could accept it. As long as she could see me again, she believed she could bring back my feelings for her. But what she hadn't anticipated was hearing the word fiancé. It was as if someone had poured a bucket of ice water over her head. She froze from the crown of her head to the tips of her toes. It felt like her heart had been seized by a giant hand, squeezing so tight she couldn't breathe. She wanted desperately for me to say it was all a joke, that Mia was just a junior colleague, but I didn't. Inside the room, my friends had already moved from joking about being groomsmen to arguing over who would be the godfather of my future child. She couldn't hold it in anymore. With those thoughts swirling in her head, Chloe pushed open the door. Her eyes locked immediately on my and Mia's intertwined hands. The warmth and closeness between us was unmistakable. It made Chloe's breath catch in her throat. But I didn't care what she was thinking in that moment. To me, she was just a familiar stranger, someone from my past. 2 years ago, we had already broken up. I had made myself perfectly clear. Yet now, here she was, ruining what should have been a joyful reunion. And that sentence she had just shouted, what was she trying to say? I frowned at her, clearly irritated. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We broke up 2 years ago." Feeling Mia's slight squeeze on my palm, I looked down and saw her puffed up cheeks. I couldn't help but smile, tightening my grip on her hand. Clearly, I would need to do a little coaxing later. Mia had sensed Chloe's intense gaze almost immediately. But she wasn't someone who shrank away. She simply shifted, wrapping both of her arms around mine in a subtle show of ownership. Sam, who had been quietly watching from the side, finally stepped forward with a cold expression. "Chloe," he said, "you're the one who chose that sickly guy 2 years ago. Why are you looking for my bro now?" But Chloe seemed not to hear a thing. Her eyes were glued to me. "Leo, this isn't real, right?" she asked. "You're just doing this to make me jealous, right?" I almost laughed from how absurd her words were. "Not real? Did she seriously think I would go so far as to hire someone just to spite her? I didn't care what she believed. Still, part of me was confused. Back when we were together, Chloe had always been so distant. No matter how much I did for her, her attitude never changed. There were times I wondered if her heart was made of stone. Nothing I did ever seemed to reach her. Then Julian came along, and suddenly, I saw a side of her I had never witnessed before. Soft, gentle, attentive. That was when I realized it wasn't that she couldn't love. She just didn't love me. That's why I let go. I stepped aside so she could be with him. So why was she now acting like she couldn't forget me? Even if Julian had passed away from his illness, that didn't explain her current behavior. I said clearly, word by word, "Sorry, Mia is the woman I actually proposed to. Our wedding is on the 18th of this month, 10 days from now." Chloe's eyes instantly filled with tears. She couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that the man she loved was about to marry someone else. But I had no interest in rehashing old drama. I didn't want one irrelevant person to ruin my celebration tonight. I motioned to my friends to change locations. As I passed Chloe, she instinctively reached out and grabbed the hem of my shirt, but there was no warmth left in my heart for her. I pulled away without hesitation, wrapped my arm around Mia, and walked out. Willow stood frozen, watching us leave. In the car, Mia quickly let go of my arm and crossed hers, scooting away from me slightly with a little huff. I chuckled. So this was what it felt like, to have someone get jealous over me. Back when I was with Chloe, she had always been indifferent. There was a time I tried to make her jealous. I asked a female friend to pretend we were close, going to work and having meals together, even posting ambiguous things online. I waited and waited for Chloe to confront me. But after a week, she didn't say a single word. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I asked her directly if she had seen me with someone else. Her response was, "Just a glance." Then, "I don't care." Those words had branded themselves into me. They carved a hole in my heart. And now, just seeing my ex again had made Mia visibly upset. Maybe this was what it meant to truly love. Or not. Pulling myself out of my thoughts, I gently pulled Mia into my arms, placing my hand over hers. "Don't be mad," I said softly. "You're going to be a bride soon. Don't let anger make you less beautiful." Mia's face turned red in an instant. She glared at me playfully. "Are you saying I'm not beautiful now?" I quickly raised my hands in surrender. No, I said, grinning. "My junior is the most beautiful woman in the world." Laughter burst from the front seat. Sam and the others were clearly enjoying the moment. "Damn," one of them said. "I never thought I'd see you like this. We should have filmed it." We all went to a new place and partied until we were completely satisfied. Afterward, I took Mia home. Her family hadn't seen her in 2 years, and with the wedding so close, she would want to spend time with them. Once I saw her safely inside, I went back to my own place. I didn't expect to find Chloe sitting on the couch when I opened the door. My parents were sitting nearby, looking clearly uneasy. 2 years ago, when I told them I was canceling the wedding, I never explained the real reason. I had only said that I was focusing on my research. So, in their minds, the breakup had mostly been our family's decision. Even though they had always sensed that Chloe's feelings for me were lukewarm at best, they still felt that we owed her something. Over the past 2 years, even while I was away, Chloe had often shown up around our apartment complex. She never came upstairs or knocked on the door, but my parents could tell. She was looking for me. And in the last 6 months, her visits had become more frequent, nearly every other day. My parents had tried to gently discourage her. They reminded her that I had been firm in my decision and that I wasn't even in the city anymore. Waiting around wouldn't change anything. But even so, they couldn't deny what they saw. Her persistence had left a deep impression on them. Their image of her once cold and distant, had started to soften. They had even talked in private, wondering if they should try to convince me to give her another chance the next time I came home. After all, 5 years together and just one step away from marriage, it wasn't something that could be easily erased. But to their surprise, when they finally got the news that I was coming back, they also learned that I was engaged and planning to get married soon. The guilt weighed heavily on them. They felt that they had wronged Chloe. So when she came to the door that afternoon, they knew she had somehow heard that I was back. They figured it was better to let us talk it out. Maybe then Chloe would finally stop holding on. When Chloe saw me enter, her eyes lit up and she quickly stood up. Meanwhile, I just felt a headache coming on. I hadn't expected her to follow me home. Didn't she always say she didn't like spending time with elders? And now she was sitting here, in my family's living room. What was she trying to do? My parents pulled me aside and quickly told me everything about the past 2 years and how often she had come by looking for me. If they hadn't said it themselves, I wouldn't have believed it. To me, Chloe had never seemed to truly care about me. Why would she be so determined to look for me after I had left? I couldn't understand her behavior anymore. But with the wedding fast approaching, I knew I had to deal with this before something went wrong. The last thing I needed was trouble on my big day. So Chloe and I sat down, face to face. For the first time in 2 years, we were having a conversation, calm and direct. I kept my expression neutral. If you have something to say, just say it. Let's get it all out in one go. Chloe's hopeful look faltered immediately. Her eyes darkened, and a flicker of hurt showed beneath the surface. Leo, do we have to be like strangers? I tapped my fingers on the table, a steady and rhythmic sound. Say what you came here to say, I repeated. Chloe's heart trembled. Her nails dug into her palm as she braced herself. She asked softly, Back then, did you break up with me because of Julian? I hadn't even responded when her expression suddenly shifted into a mix of anxiety and desperation. I can explain, she said. Back then, I truly believed Julian was the one who saved my life. I never had any feelings for him. Nothing ever happened between us, absolutely nothing. It wasn't until after you left, when you were gone, that's when I realized. Chloe let out a few choked sobs, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. It took her quite a while to compose herself enough to continue. That New Year's night 6 years ago, the person who saved me was you. I was wrong all this time. Chloe looked at me with her tear-filled eyes, brimming with remorse, guilt, frustration, and a flicker of hidden hope. Hope that, upon hearing the truth, I might forgive her. Hope that we could be together again. But unfortunately for her, she had miscalculated. When I realized she was referring to that New Year's night 6 years ago, I was genuinely shocked. Back then, when she introduced me to Julian, she never said exactly when or how he had supposedly saved her. And that year, after I woke up in the hospital, I didn't mention anything about what happened that night either. I thought bringing it up would only hurt her more. And it turns out, that's where all the misunderstanding had begun. Even now, despite having left all of that behind me, I couldn't help but find it incredibly ironic. Seeing me still silent, Chloe cautiously asked, Leo, I didn't keep the baby. Now that I know I was wrong about who saved me, can't we start over? Her words pulled me out of my thoughts. I shook my head without any hesitation and told her, that's no longer possible. Chloe's face went completely pale, and she staggered as if her legs could give out at any moment. My clear and unwavering answer had shattered the last fragment of hope she had been clinging to. She had waited for me for 2 years, but she had never imagined that this would be the ending. She truly believed, naively, that I would love her forever. With tears streaming from her eyes, she asked me, Why, I love you. Watching how tightly she was still holding on, I couldn't help but remember how things used to be when we were together. She never gave me gifts of her own initiative. We never shared the closeness or chemistry that other couples seem to have. And not once, not even once, did she say she loved me. Even so, I was convinced she felt something for me back then. I used to think, if she agreed to be with me, it had to mean that I mattered to her. I told myself that her coldness was just a part of her personality, that one day, with enough patience, I would melt her heart. I clung to that delusion for 5 whole years, until Julian came along and destroyed that pathetic fantasy completely. I could no longer lie to myself, and now, after all that, Chloe says she loves me. I couldn't stop a sarcastic smile from curling on my lips. I asked her, "Are you sure you really love me?" Chloe didn't understand why I would ask her that. A look of confusion flickered across her face. I continued. "If you loved me," I said, "why did you never once buy me a birthday gift? If you loved me, why did you refuse to travel with me? If you loved me, why did you get pregnant with another man's child, and even take wedding photos with him? My heart is made of flesh too, Chloe. I can feel pain. If this is what you call love, I'm sorry, but I don't want it." With each sentence I spoke, Chloe's face grew paler. Memories came flooding back, unrelenting. She wanted to deny it, but no matter how hard she searched her mind, everything I said was true. One by one, these were things she had actually done. There was nothing to argue. Finally, Chloe grasped onto the one thing she could. Julian. "But I only treated Julian that way because I thought he was the one who saved me," she said weakly. "If I had known it was you from the start, I would never have—" "Enough." I cut her off. Did she really believe that Julian was the only reason things had fallen apart between us? Clearly, even after 2 years, she still hadn't figured out the real reason our relationship failed. I looked at her and said, calmly but firmly, "Even if it hadn't been Julian, it would have been someone else, Kevin or Mark or whoever. And even if he was your savior, there were countless ways to repay him. Why did it have to be having his child? You're not really clinging to me because you love me. You're clinging because I chased you for 20 years. And now that I've finally let go, you can't stand it. Don't look for me again. Let's just part ways peacefully." After those words, I showed her to the door. Chloe walked home in a daze. Was it really just unwillingness to let go? She didn't know, but in her mind, a memory surfaced. The day I had asked her to be my girlfriend. She remembered frowning and asking if I had lost a dare. When I denied it, she had simply nodded. I had confirmed with her again and again, and only then did I smile. And when she wasn't looking, I had snuck in a little victory sign with my hand. The moment had started their 5 years together. Day and night I had been there. And she had felt my kindness. She had never thought about breaking up. The day she accepted my proposal, she had truly, sincerely wanted to spend the rest of her life with me. But now, hearing my words, she finally understood. In 5 whole years, she had never taken the initiative. She had never once expressed her love. I had been the only one giving, carrying their entire relationship on my back the whole time. And worse, when someone else appeared, she had given all of her attention to that person, ignoring the pain I had been silently enduring. What right did she have now to ask for my forgiveness? After clearing the air with Chloe, I felt lighter, like a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. That night, I slept soundly. The next morning, I got up early to pick up the rings and gold wedding pieces we had ordered. Since we only had 2 months off, we planned to go on a 1-month world tour for our honeymoon right after the ceremony, so everything had to move quickly. Fortunately, both of our families were fully supportive. All Mia and I needed to prepare were the rings and our outfits. The rest was being taken care of. We had already picked out the design months ago, so I just had to go to the store and pick everything up. After I left the shop, I took my time strolling down the street, admiring the rings and gold bracelets in the sunlight. I held one of the rings up and smiled to myself, imagining how stunning Mia would look wearing it. I didn't notice the two men who were leaning against a nearby wall. They exchanged a look and quietly began to follow me. As I turned a corner, a dark figure suddenly lunged out from the side and snatched the bag from my hand. I instinctively went to chase after him, but behind me I heard the sickening sound of a knife plunging into flesh. Shunk. But the pain I was expecting never came. I quickly turned around and saw Chloe standing behind me, her hand clutching her abdomen, her face deathly pale. Blood was still gushing out from between her fingers. She was about to collapse. I rushed to catch her, grabbing my phone with my other hand to call for emergency services. Chloe was already drifting in and out of consciousness, her mind drowning in waves of fine. So this is what it feels like to be stabbed. She thought back. This must have been how much it hurt when I was stabbed for her back then. Through the blurriness of her vision, she forced her eyes open. Seeing my panicked expression, she gave a weak smile. The motion tugged at her wound and sent a fresh surge of pain through her body. My thoughts were a blur. I could only think of how to stop the bleeding. I pressed down on the wound with trembling hands and shouted, "Chloe, stay with me. Don't close your eyes. The doctors are almost here. Just hold on." Just before she lost consciousness, she heard the sound of sirens. Paramedics lifted her into the ambulance, working quickly to stop the bleeding while notifying the hospital to prepare for emergency surgery. Chloe's last sight before slipping under was my panic-stricken face by her side. The surgery took 3 hours. Finally, the doctors announced that her condition was stable. They said the knife hadn't struck any vital organs, but the wound was deep, and the blood loss had been severe. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I had been holding, my whole body slumping into the chair. My eyes moved to the bed, where Chloe still lay unconscious, pale and silent. My emotions were a tangled mess. I hadn't expected it. Chloe had taken a knife for me. Had she been following me all this time? But I had made myself clear just yesterday. Why would she do this? I had so many questions. But until she woke up, all I could do was bury them deep in my chest. Mr. and Mrs. Liu arrived at the hospital soon after. One look at their daughter, pale, motionless, lying in that hospital bed, and their eyes turned red with grief. In their eyes, I had abandoned their daughter on her wedding day 2 years ago, and now that I had finally returned, she had ended up in the hospital again. Of course, they blamed me. Mrs. Liu broke down and confronted me, her voice shaking with rage. "What exactly do you want from her, Leo? What does our Chloe owe you that she has to end up like this? You left her at the altar and now you've dragged her into this again. Why can't you just stay away?" I didn't argue. I stood there silently and took the full force of her anger. There was no need to drag the past out in front of her parents. And today, Chloe had truly saved me. Mrs. Liu was about to push past me again when a soft voice interrupted. "Leo!" We all turned. Chloe had woken up. Mr. and Mrs. Liu immediately rushed to her side. "Chloe, how do you feel? Are you still in pain?" She shook her head gently, then looked toward me. A mother knows her daughter best, and Mrs. Liu saw it clearly in her eyes. Chloe wanted to talk to me alone. Though she was clearly reluctant, one look at her daughter's frail condition made her bite back her protests. Mr. and Mrs. Liu left the room, leaving just the two of us. I stood at her bedside, looking down at her pale face, feeling a wave of emotions I couldn't name, and I finally asked, "Was it worth it?" Chloe gave me a faint, weak smile. "Yes," she said softly. "It was worth it. I guess this must have been how much it hurt when you saved me, right?" Seeing how much it pained her to speak, I quickly tried to stop her. "You should rest. Don't talk right now." But she shook her head, her voice slow but steady. "I'm not here because I followed you on purpose," she said. "After what you said yesterday, I thought a lot, and I finally figured it out. I treated you unfairly. I took your love for granted. I just wanted to tell you today that I regret it. I've been hesitating, not knowing how to say it. And then I saw that man pull out a knife behind you. I didn't even think. All I knew was I couldn't let you get hurt." I never thought I would hear those words from Chloe. If it had been years ago, I probably would have been deeply moved. But now, everything had changed. I was no longer the Leo who loved Chloe blindly. All I felt for her now was gratitude. Nothing more. Chloe noticed my silence and understood exactly what it meant. Still, she wanted to try. One last time. "If Julian hadn't come into the picture," she asked gently, "would we have made it?" I shook my head. No. Julian had only been the trigger. In truth, my feelings had been slowly drained by her indifference over 5 long years. His appearance had only accelerated the process. Even without him, even if we had gone ahead with the wedding, Chloe would never have realized just how much her attitude had hurt me. In time, we would have still drifted apart. Marriage wouldn't have saved us. Divorce would have been inevitable. So, in a way, Julian's presence had saved us from more heartache. At least it ended early. Chloe clearly understood now. There was no going back. After a long pause, she asked again, "Can I meet your fiancé?" I hadn't expected that. I blinked, momentarily stunned, before answering, "If she's okay with it, then I don't mind." To my surprise, Mia agreed. Later, when Mia arrived at the hospital, I quietly closed the door behind her, leaving them some privacy. Chloe looked at the woman who was about to become my wife, and in her heart, there was no hatred, only admiration. Admiration for the woman who would get to spend a lifetime by my side. Mia noticed the heavy bandages wrapped around Chloe's stomach. Her eyes softened with obvious concern. "That must really hurt," she said. "Such a deep wound. It must be painful." At that moment, Chloe finally understood why I had fallen for Mia. Mia wasn't afraid to show how she felt. She didn't lash out or mock her, even knowing she was my ex. And I, after 5 years of cold affection, did need someone like Mia. Someone who could speak the word love without hesitation. Someone who could make me feel clearly, undeniably loved. I don't know what they talked about. But when Mia came out, Chloe's entire demeanor had changed. She was no longer stubborn. She seemed peaceful. I asked Mia what they had talked about. She just stuck out her tongue and said, "Secret, girl stuff." I chuckled and shook my head. "Women really are mysterious," I said, dropping the subject. During Chloe's recovery, I visited every other day, sometimes with Mia, sometimes on my own. Now we could talk openly about the past. And about the future, too. The day before my wedding, I still made time to stop by and see her. But with so many things to prepare, I only stayed for a few minutes before getting up to leave. Just as I reached the door, Chloe called out to me. "Leo?" she asked quietly. "Can I come to your wedding tomorrow?" I agreed. That evening, I had someone deliver her a wedding invitation and a box of wedding sweets. Chloe unwrapped one of the candies and slowly placed it in her mouth. It had been a long time since she had tasted anything sweet. On the wedding day, guests flowed in and out, friends, mentors, colleagues. Even our entire lab team came, some taking leave just for the occasion. My professor clapped me heartily on the shoulder, grinning. "You rascal," he said. "I didn't think you'd steal away your junior. You're one lucky guy." The others all joined in with teasing laughter. I turned to look at Mia, standing by my side in her flowing white wedding dress. My heart felt so full it could burst. It was only after meeting Mia that I finally understood what unreserved love felt like. The ceremony began. I stood at the altar, watching Mia walk slowly toward me on her father's arm. When they reached me, he gently placed Mia's hand into mine. "I entrust my daughter to you," he said. I looked him in the eye and promised, "You have my word. I'll cherish her for the rest of my life." Then came the vows, the rings, the kiss. The hall erupted in applause and cheers. Everywhere, laughter, joy, and blessings filled the air. From a quiet corner, Chloe clapped along, her eyes fixed on me without blinking. For a moment she thought back to that wedding 2 years ago, the one that never happened. She imagined I had probably thrown myself into every single detail back then too. The planning, the venue, the dresses, the photos. I must have compared dozens of vendors for each one. She realized then how much it must have hurt me to call it all off. I had truly loved her, and she had let me down. Now, seeing me find my happiness, she knew she should feel happy for me. She closed her eyes. A single tear slid down her cheek. After the wedding, I spent hours seeing off the guests. When I finally got a moment to rest, Sam walked over with a strange look on his face. He handed me an envelope. "It's from Chloe," he said. "She asked me to give this to you. Also, she told me to say congratulations." He patted my shoulder and walked off. I suddenly remembered. Chloe had said she would attend the wedding, but I hadn't seen her all day. I opened the envelope and began to read it, word by word. "Leo, I'm sorry. The truth is, I haven't completely let go of you yet, but I also know we can never go back. You were right. Life must move forward. Now it's time for me to go find my own. Those 5 years with you will always be the happiest time of my life. I'll never forget them. Lastly, please forgive me for being too much of a coward to say this to your face, but I truly wish you and Mia all the best and a lifetime of happiness." I folded the letter and set it aside. Then I got up and went to find my bride. I had moved on to my new life. And it was time for Chloe to find hers too. All that once was is as if it died yesterday. All that is to come begins as if it is born today.